As the saying goes, don't mop the floor if it is already clean. So what does that mean? It just simply means don't fix a problem that doesn't need to be fixed. The question is, how should California address its prison crisis? The answer, by simply doing nothing. The prison crisis in California, while some people disagree that by saying it's inhumane, is really in all reality not inhumane, and is really, as I will explain further in my speech, just simply a problem that doesn't warrant a solution. Now, the first point that I'd like to make is that there's been claims of overcrowding, prison overcrowding. But as the San Diego Union Tribune mentions, this overcrowding really isn't overcrowding in all reality. The California judicial system has only claimed it's overcrowding by 190%, for the only reason because of how the California system has labeled overcrowding. It has labeled overcrowding, or a cell being overcrowding, if it has more than one occupant in it. These are prisoners. The idea, as the San Diego Union Tribune points out, is that they can survive in one cell. If there are two people in one cell, and in the system, as quoted by the statistic, there are less than an average of two people in each cell. If there's over one person in each cell, then that's not really overcrowding. You know, when we look at colleges, almost everybody's required to have, if not 2 roommates, but 3 roommates, sometimes even 4 roommates. How is 2 prisoners in a cell, some of who have committed violent crimes, why does that warrant action? My second point. The state brought this on itself. As the Fresno Bee points out, and the writer Dan Walters points out, the state brought this on itself. Walters points out that years of warning about this overcrowding and about this constant money problem with the prison system, that the bureaucrats in Sacramento have ignored this problem. Should the citizens of the state of California be forced to burden the tax dollars for the bureaucrats' mistakes? It's not a huge issue today. When we look at the economic problems that California is facing and all the taxes that we'll already need to pay, fixing, as Walters points out, a system that we had plenty of warning on and that really isn't an issue to us is not that important in today's political situation in California. My final point, and it's one that Eli Layer of the National Review Online points out very strongly. The current proposal in California is that we release nonviolent offenders, that we just simply say goodbye. And while this may sound great, you know, nonviolent offenders, they have a second chance. Layer reminds readers that these nonviolent offenders, in all actuality, really have had violent pasts. They are in jail because they are drug dealers, they're burglars, they're thieves. And while this isn't always violent, their records on 60% of the time show that they have committed violent pasts and that they do have a violent past or a violent mark on their record. Layer points out that by doing this, the state of California would be releasing tens of thousands of bad guys onto our streets, onto the streets that our children go to school, onto the streets that we just live in, into our neighborhoods, into our schools, into our society. Does this really warrant action? Should the state really be concerned about this when it's already seen there isn't that much of a problem? So all in all, we need to realize that, one, if there is a crisis, it's a small crisis, and that it does not need to be resolved. And two, that the state of California brought this on itself, and taxpayers should not be burdened with the costs of letting bad guys who we don't want out on the streets. And third of all, the current proposals that's on the top of the list isn't even a smart one. Solving the California prison crisis, the solution has not been found, but perhaps that's because there is no crisis. As I stated earlier, it doesn't make sense for the state of California to mop its floors. After all, they're already clean.